And joining me now from Ottawa is Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you, Rosie.
After a busy week, we've already talked once this week. I've had time now to refine my questions even more, so let me do that.
It's a big budget.
Yes, it is. I want to start with childcare if I can, because there has been obviously some reaction since the budget on Monday. Premier of Alberta, Jason Kenney, pushed back against the plan. He said that he wants a solution that will work for Alberta. His finance minister said, we'll take the money and design a program of our own. Is that a conversation you are willing to have with Alberta or with other provinces?
I am always happy to talk with Alberta and with all the provinces and territories. We have put a lot of money on the table. What we're going to be doing is looking for willing partners, having conversations in good faith. We're clear about our objectives, and that is to get to affordable, average $10 a day childcare for Canadians across the country in 5 years. And we're going to focus on high quality care, on accessible care, and on affordability. But I understand that each province and territory is different, and we'll go into those conversations with high ambitions and good faith.
You told the Toronto Star, I think it was last week, I don't think governments can spend with impunity. I do think there are limits to what we can spend and borrow. I'm not sure Canadians after this week would understand what you think those limits are, given how much was in the budget and how far we are in deficit. So could you explain what you think the limits are to spending and borrowing?
100%. And actually, the limits are clearly delineated in the budget. We showed a clearly declining debt to GDP ratio going down to 49.2% in 25-26 and a deficit in 25-26 that's just over 1%. And I would point out to Canadians that Canada today, even after this extraordinary, albeit necessary spending, still has the lowest debt to GDP ratio in the G7. So yes, these are significant investments. Yes, we committed to do a lot to continue in the fight against COVID, extending those supports through to the end of September. But this is a sustainable and a prudent fiscal course.
One of the things that the United Kingdom is doing, that the U.S. president is doing in the days ahead, I think, is raising corporate taxes. That wasn't in your budget, but at some point, some of this spending might need a source of revenue. Is that something that you would ever consider, increasing corporate taxes, particularly at a time when some of our allies are doing that as well?
So the real focus of this budget, sort of the core objective, is jobs and growth. This is about getting Canada back to work and getting our whole economy, starting with our businesses, on a long-term higher growth trajectory. And we think the best way to pay off your debts is to have stronger growth. So that is our approach. Now, we think fairness is important, and there are a number of fairness measures in the budget. The tax on vacant, non-resident, non-owned by Canadians property, the digital services tax, the very significant measures on tax evasion, tax avoidance, jurisdiction shopping, the luxury tax. But I want to be clear. The focus in this budget is jobs and growth. The government is investing to do that. And actually, there are some tax incentives in the budget because we want to create an environment where businesses, especially small businesses, have an incentive to invest in themselves and in becoming more productive.
So is it fair to say that this isn't something that it's not the right time to even have that conversation? Is that a fair assessment of your position?
Yeah, I mean, what my view, as expressed in this budget, is that now is the time to focus on jobs and growth. I want Canadian businesses to be optimistic. I want them to see a government commitment to getting growth back up to where it was, to making up for those losses of the COVID recession. I want them to feel that now is a great time to invest in themselves. And I've given them a lot of reasons to do that.
Okay, I want to move to climate change, which I realize isn't your file, but it is a part of the budget, as you pointed out to me earlier. The Alberta Environment Minister said that Alberta wasn't consulted about these new targets. You are obviously going to need buy-in from Alberta. I wonder whether you think that should have happened differently, and how you get that buy-in from provinces that are still reliant on oil and gas for their own existence.
It's not just Alberta that is reliant on oil and gas.
No.
And I'm not suggesting you suggested otherwise, Rosie, but it's a good opportunity for me to point out to people across the country, our entire economy is reliant on the energy sector. The energy sector is such a big part of our GDP. It is a huge part of our exports, and it is very, very important for our current account balance. So I really understand the importance of the energy sector. And there are some really central measures in this budget to support the energy sector in driving down its emissions. I think the CCUS tax credit that we launched a 90-day consultation on with this budget is going to be a transformative measure for the Canadian economy. We already have some really smart work being done on carbon capture, storage, and utilization. This budget is going to turbocharge that, and it will turbocharge work on areas like green hydrogen. So that's going to be good for Alberta. It's going to be good for the energy sector, and I really look forward to working on that. And I actually already have had some of the leaders of the Alberta energy sector get in touch with me since the budget came out to say they're looking forward to working on that too.
Okay. A couple questions on COVID. As you know, your government has now closed, shut down flights from India and Pakistan for the next 30 days because of the variant and concerns there. But as I'm sure you also know, Premier Ford, Premier Legault have signed a joint letter this week asking for stricter international restrictions, not even mentioning India. They believe that more should be done to police the land border where there are people crossing over, and that all kinds of flights should be restricted. Will the government take any further action on restricting international flights to prevent the further spread of COVID?
So we are constantly reviewing our measures at the border. I think that I'm really pleased that we were able to act on shutting down flights from India and Pakistan. Canada has among the toughest measures when it comes to the border of any country in the world. And we're reviewing the data. We're talking to scientists all the time. We are talking to premiers across the country, constantly looking to see if there's more we should be doing.
Doug Ford, your premier, my premier, we're both in Ontario. He's under immense pressure, as you know. He did apologize to people in the province this week for what he called some of his mistakes. He has previously talked about his close relationship with you and how he gets along with you very well. Have you reached out to him or spoken to him? I realize you've had a busy week, but have you reached out to him on behalf of the government to encourage him to take some of the help that the Prime Minister has offered him?
I had a good conversation yesterday with Peter, the Ontario Finance Minister, and I asked him to pass on my thoughts to the Premier.
Okay.
And I'm sure he did.
Yeah. Okay. Are you concerned that Ontario is not so far very responsive to the offer that's been put on the table for support?
Look, I think that we all know how tough the fight against the third wave of the virus is in Ontario. And I am very sympathetic to and understanding of how tough it is to be in the driver's seat facing that kind of an onslaught. Our approach since the beginning of the crisis, since the beginning of the pandemic, has been a Team Canada approach and a collaborative approach. And, we're going to continue that while recognizing that, I'll just leave it there. We're there to talk. I was glad to talk to Peter yesterday, and we're just going to continue the conversation.
I know you don't have much more time, but you're gonna enjoy this question, so I'm gonna give it to you. It was a big week. It was a big week for women. This was the first budget tabled by a female finance minister. A lot of people celebrated that you broke that glass ceiling, but I wondered if it got you thinking about what maybe more you could do if you were, say, Prime Minister.
You know what the budget got me thinking about, Rosie, is all the work that we are going to have to do to actually implement the great things we put in the budget.
Oh, so well, that's a very political answer. But did you?
Busy doing my current job, and I do. You know what? Can I say one thing about women prime ministers in Canada?
Please. Yes.
Which I said in the House, but this is one thing I have been reflecting on. I think this is a good moment for us to think about and honor Kim Campbell. Canada has had a woman prime minister.
Yes.
And we should remember that. She broke that glass ceiling. It was hard to do.
But did you have a moment this week where you thought, hey, there's little kids, little girls watching me right now, seeing what I'm doing, and they might think differently about these jobs, watching me doing this today?
Yeah, I did. I mean, Rosie, to be very personal, my focus is on trying to be the best possible finance minister I can be, not the best possible woman finance minister. And that's how I tend to approach it. But I was made aware this week, mostly by the people who got in touch with me, that symbols matter. And I am glad to have just in my person being able to matter to Canadian women and girls.
Okay, thank you. I know I pushed my time. I appreciate it. Thanks very much, Finance Minister.
Nice talking to you.